with the monitors being here, everyone's kind of scattered around doing a lot of different things lately. Most of all, just being responsive to them, just being
Completely
ready to jump when
understand.
they say, yeah, when they say jump.
So yeah, what I'll kind of do is I'll bring you through the system a little bit, and just to give you a quick a summary again, basically, this learning management system was created back in 2008. The height of the recession with the intent to serve unemployed and underemployed. So what we did, the whole intent was to provide skill upgrading. So we brought in these different content providers and tried to put them into context with the whole goal of helping someone kind of see where their career path may be, getting them the skills, and then finding the job. So that's where these kind of, if you look at my screen here, the 1, 2, 3 steps
Yes.
resonate. Basically, we want someone to go in to do an assessment. We want them to learn and then ultimately find a job. So how our system previously worked was it was built off the skills and occupations found from the federal ONET database. So this first step today will link you out to a self-assessment or an option to actually look at job titles from the federal ONET. So the self-assessment is really, just kind of rating an individual skills from none, beginner, intermediate, to advanced on the skills found throughout kind of the different, 1,000 occupations from the ONET. And what this brings you to, it just, kind of rates yourself on 50 different skills. This brings you to one of our tools called JobFit. JobFit, the intent of JobFit really is to show you where your skills are at currently and how they align with positions or open occupations. So what we do is we bring in those job titles from the federal ONET, and you can kind of see based on a state level the number employed, yearly openings, average wage, and then we link out to Indeed.com. So this model was kind of, setting your goal job per se. So if you wanted to become, whatever was a good fit for you, that occupation, you could kind of see what skills were required for that occupation. And then what we did is we linked out courses to help you remediate those skills. So this is based on kind of an algorithm based on that self-assessment, based on the
Yes.
skills of the ONET, and so forth. So this is what we had used previously, and this was really a recommendation to help people get started. But what we've expanded to, of course, is this concept of career pathways, which is similar to this in the fact that an individual is doing a self-assessment and they're still getting that kind of automatic skill remediation. What we intend on doing, though, is just really expanding it further. So with the Pathways tool, the intent is to really kind of bring in a community and truly flesh out these pathways. So what we've done is we've taken a look based on competency models and based on kind of U.S. DOL data as well as regional or state data. We've built these pathways that cover really 10 different industries. These industries are really relevant throughout the nation. However, there are certain areas where we can kind of customize and make it more specific to wherever we're serving. So if we take manufacturing, for example, what we have is we have the industry path there. From there, we can look at the occupation. And this tool is really still in development. This is kind of just the foundation as we're piloting with different locations nationally. We're finding out what's working and what's not. But these occupations, currently, they're just there. The next step, of course, would be to kind of break it up into entry levels, mid-levels, and then you have the kind of executive levels as well. But right now, let's see if we just go to a general laborer. If we click on that occupation, if we go down a little bit further, this is really kind of the key of it. Like I said, they do a self-assessment based on those particular skills in that occupation. But what we can see here is this is where the skill gaps come into place. So it brings in these different skills required for this occupation and industry, and then the red indicates you have a skill gap, where the blue and the green indicate you either have the skill or exceed at the skill. So what we've done down below is we've kind of broken these skill levels into different foundations, because this whole concept of career pathways is progressive skill building. We want to get someone from level 1 to level 2 and so forth and so on.
Yep. Okay.
So what we've done is we've kind of coordinated this light purple are the foundation skills, which are the same throughout all occupations and all industries. So those are really kind of the basic things. You have the academic skills, personal, and workplace. So what we've done for each skill is just added courses that can remediate that skill. An individual, currently the algorithm is an individual just has to complete one of those courses to then kind of move on and fulfill their skill requirement, but that is a customizable feature as well. So in kind of working with different partners and different programs, you know, some of these things can be turned on and off, really depending on what services are provided today and how this can kind of filter in. Basically, when I say that things can be turned on and off, we can swap out these courses to make it completely customizable, but we can also add in kind of third-party elements. So if there are workshops, if there are additional training programs, we can add that in as well.
Even if they're not online, as far as stuff we might be offering? Oh, wow. Cool.
So it's an opportunity to truly kind of flesh it out to help someone who's coming in here, whether they're a job seeker or a youth, they come in here and they can really understand where they can go in terms of training and what's required for that, because you can flesh it out. And again, if it's something like a workshop that you wanted to include in here, you could do that, and then you could have the administrator, you know, confirm that or deny that, you know, depending on what it is. But it's really kind of unique in that aspect that you can really customize it. But like I said, we kind of cover the skills in terms of foundation and industry with the content providers that we have through online learning. But the idea is through this Pathways portal, it's a lot of consulting. It's a lot of helping people, whether it be other training providers or just the career staff, understand how they can really leverage online learning to make it a cost-effective and also kind of a prerequisite to other types of training, because that's where the huge opportunity is because there's so many, you know, there's limited funds, obviously, and with only, you know, so many ITAs to distribute, you need to make sure that you're really getting the value, and these people who are getting these ITAs and so forth are going to follow through and it's a good fit for them. So this is more or less, we're finding or seeing this opportunity of career pathways through metrics to really be the first stepping stone to what an individual is getting in terms of training, and kind of based off of what they, you know, can show or what they do through here, you can then lead them on to other types of training. And again, it's, you know, online learning, it really isn't for everyone. So there's ways that we're also kind of utilizing this with other populations. I mean, you talk about adults who are super motivated, that's great, but they're, you know, with WIOA and with just the employment conditions today, there's different populations that are coming through the doors. So with that population, we have what we're calling the entry-level pathway, and this is really aimed at kind of youth, reentry, and public assistance. I know, I mean, that's, you know, an issue throughout the nation, obviously, but this is more of the concept of they would do kind of a blended learning setting. There's a lot of programs already in place for these types of, you know, populations, but adding this component helps introduce them, one, to kind of like the computer and online learning setting, which is obviously applicable for any job today in our, you know, in this kind of economy, but it just also helps enhance the programs as well. So a lot of youth providers that we're working with currently are really making this their own, and meaning that they're kind of using this concept of career pathways, but more so the skill tracks as well, which are kind of bundled courses, to make their own kind of custom curricula that complements what they're doing today in the classroom or what they're doing in terms of training already. So I think where the, you know, like you said, timing is a huge part of it. You
Yes.
have to be able to have all the partners on board, have the kind of strategies in place that you want to pursue, and then when the time is right, this is just a great tool to be able to share to those partners so they can utilize it and kind of really run with it. And that's, the largest challenge, I would say.
Right.
But what I can show you as well, I just want to show you another feature. Basically, the way that we kind of set this up, let's go down here. Okay, so just for your reference, the system itself, there's a lot of things that can kind of be turned on and off. Really depending on how you distribute this and give people access, as well as who your partners are. So typically, when working with workforce development boards, we recommend individuals receive an orientation session, which might be held biweekly or through the month, to go on site and attend the orientation, learn what metrics is, get access, and so forth. But a lot of workforce development boards in New Jersey that we're working with are looking at a virtual model where individuals kind of register virtually. We do blast emails, so different. That's how they find out about it. They can automatically get access, and so everything's kind of automated and virtual. So that's kind of where people are headed, I think, just to get as staff are being cut and so forth, it's easier to administer that way. But just for instance, this is kind of how things are set up in the system today in organizing an organization. Basically, we have the foundation of the administration based on physical locations. So we always want to kind of have a physical location in place, not only to restrict the administrative to that location, but also so that you can kind of control and also, actually have a physical location to send people back to if they do need services or if they need some help, because that's the goal too, is to have more people going through the doors. So based on the location, we can kind of add different people, and so this becomes more of like a CRM system where we're kind of utilizing the case managers and the managerial staff so that people are directed properly. So we basically want everyone to be connected to a location, and every person, every client, be connected to a case manager so that their accountability is easily shown. Because the beauty of online learning, you can see everything that someone does. So if the administrators can see that as well, or the case managers, it closes the gap in kind of just the guess of, well, they went for online training, I'm not sure what they're doing. So it kind of moves the process along even further. And then everything, is kind of reported, through custom tags and so forth. So it's really, again, it definitely depends on the timing for you all, but there's a lot of that you can do with this. It's just how much you want to put into it, and how much can really be leveraged.
So can I ask you some kind of operational questions? And I would be curious to know more about how the credentialing aspect of this would work. And, I'm making the assumption that USDOL is recognizing these credentials. Are they actually meeting performance, credential attainment performance with this system?
Sure. So that's a really good question. What we have through the Skillsoft training, we have training for approximately 120 or so industry certifications. So what I'm going to now, these are the certifications that are industry recognized. So USDOL would recognize these as credentials because no one becomes certified simply by taking this training. They have to go to that testing center, whether that be Pearson VUE or Prometrics, to take the exam. So those are considered credentials. However, when an individual completes a course within Metrics, they receive a certificate of completion. That's not a credential per se. That's not recognized by USDOL. In addition, what we're kind of moving towards with this pathway is this concept of digital badges as well. Those digital badges are not recognized by USDOL because the digital badges would be something that would have to be kind of built and bought into on a local level because it's
Right.
directly dealing with employers. So it's
Yes.
it's challenging that, this technically doesn't count for things, but in terms of WIOA, this would count towards career services, whether that be basic career services or individualized career services. And the unique feature kind of, going back to things in terms of performance data, the reason why New Jersey has done the self-registration is because they can have people who are not reportable receive
Yes.
services. So
Right.
technically, they're serving more people, kind of, but they're not reportable in terms of the performance data, so it looks good for them. And in addition, you can also extend people out. So if they're still, doing online services, they can have a soft exit. So it can also kind of affect that performance data.
Indeed.
Yeah, so that's kind of on that level, but I just want to show you really quick how our integration works. We are integrated with Pearson VUE and Certiport, which means that we can kind of do this seamless fashion of where we deliver the certification training, we preload it to someone's plan, and then it's kind of an all automatic system or kind of back-end system through that, meaning that they complete the training. Once they complete it, they get a test prep. Once they complete that test prep, they get a voucher, and this is all kind of communicated via email. So this is what I'm going to. This is the back end. This is just a user that I'm going to. And what you can see here is there's basically an account created for a user, and then there's licenses, which gives them access to certain content or catalogs of content. So that's how that works. And those licenses, with this kind of portal model, it's unlimited licenses because we want the idea of you're reaching out and serving more people in the community. Previously, we had a cost per license. So the cost per license was typically between, $50 and $80 or something like that.
Yeah, I think our first pilot a few years ago was like that.
Yeah, we just switched over to this unlimited model probably last year or so. We piloted it with someone, and they just found great results with that. So yeah, this is just how the credentialing feature works. You assign the credential, and then you can kind of keep track of what those individuals are doing. And everything in this, kind of licenses page is set up that if an individual doesn't access courses or if they don't complete, all of the credential training, they don't move on to the next step. So they wouldn't receive that test prep, and they wouldn't. So the cost of that is kind of put on hold, and it's not really distributed until they complete the training and what they need to complete.
So do the credentials cost extra above and beyond the e-learning licenses?
Yeah, so what we typically do with the credentials is there'll be a pool of monies. So whether that be, $1,000 or $5,000, that is an additional fee.
Okay.
That would be part of that, yeah. Wouldn't be a part, I should say.
Is there a way, because I think the proposals that, go back to, the proposal I got from Brian back in July didn't have the pricing on the credentials. If there's an addendum or something that could be sent our way on the credential pricing, that would help in our evaluation as well.
Yeah, are there certain credentials that you're looking at to kind of target?
Well, I'm not readily familiar with all that are available, but I'm going to say probably pretty heavy into the manufacturing, customer service credentials, the, like the Microsoft, the IT credentials, and there may be others that we'd be interested in as well, but those would be the top.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to see pricing and options on all of them.
Yeah, so what I can do is I can send you, I think it would be helpful just to send you a list of what they are that we have.
Yes.
And just basically how it works with, like I said, with the credentialing is typically people will purchase a pool of dollars to be applied to credentials. And the majority of our certifications are IT or business. So
You
Microsoft
bet.
Office, yes. Project management, yes. But when we go into manufacturing, we don't necessarily have credentials for that. So the majority is
Okay.
kind of those IT and business, just as an
Okay.
FYI.
You bet. That's helpful to know. Thank you.
Yeah. So are there any kind of further questions? I mean, did this help at all, kind of seeing these things?
Yes, it does. It is very helpful because that's, not necessarily something we immediately link with training, and you guys are smart to have that integrated, career exploration and the pathway obviously being very robust around the online training options. The option to include our local programming, I think, is very helpful. So, I'm starting to see kind of the fit where that would really help us. Now, you mentioned that a lot of your training customers in this regard are still at the career services level instead of the training level per se?
Yeah, well, just in terms of counting this as WIOA or
Yes.
under WIOA's legislation, metrics itself counts as the career service because we provide many of the kind of requirements for that. But that doesn't. It's tricky territory because
Yes.
we have been on eligible training provider lists in the past in various states, and we're currently actually on New York State ETPL, and we're on others. It's just now, as a training provider, you have to provide those performance, data, and we don't necessarily capture that data because we don't
Right.
charge enough for that. We're not getting
Yes.
paid to, follow through and all of that. And although we do serving, and we can kind of have this cross-link where we can find out if people got employed by requesting from DOL and so forth, we try to stay away from considering ourselves a training provider just because of that. We're a small organization and we don't have that performance, kind of piece in place, but that doesn't mean that an individual going through metrics wouldn't be considered training moving forward. I mean, because of the certification, that's where it gets tricky too, because we do have certification training. Someone can technically get an industry recognized certification, but doesn't count. And I think that's where, it would just have to be kind of a direct conversation, honestly, with DOL to understand how this can count and how we can make it work in WIOA.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that'll be really huge for us as well. And I know, for instance, on expenditure rates, there's expenditure rates tied to training activities are such a political hot button. I mean, I had a conference call arguing about this yesterday with our state agency in terms of, are we spending enough on training compared to other regions? What's the benchmark? They refuse to identify, what that is, but yet they still want one, right? So it's been very tricky on the training conversation. So I do anticipate, that interface with Missouri, with our state workforce agency, unfortunately, may be a barrier that we've got to figure out before this would be completely feasible. But man, there are so many of the components that are here that are really helpful. I'd love to see this move forward. It just may take some time to get in a place in Missouri where we would be empowered to do that. Does that make sense?
Oh my, absolutely. I mean, this is
Yeah, it's a great product. I mean, we don't see issues there in that regard. But yeah, we're going to have to kind of figure out how this works on accountable activities and all that good stuff.
Yeah, and I think I think that you've worked with Ken Ryan in the past from FutureWorks.
Yes.
So I think that would be a good conversation to have as well, maybe with him. He's basically the one who has been, keeping us updated with the WIOA and legislation, and there are a lot of gray areas and ways that we can utilize this. So I think that might be a good conversation we can set up in the coming weeks with whomever to discuss that a little bit further and how we could actually make something happen.
You bet. Anyone linking this up with any pre-apprenticeships or apprenticeship programming that you're aware of?
I mean, that's the opportunity too, and what we're really trying to do in our region here, the Albany region, is focus on that manufacturing. Really, New York, I mean, everywhere is pushing manufacturing, honestly, but specifically up here in upstate New York, we're we should be launching, this fall with nanotechnology and kind of the revival of upstate New York. So that is a huge opportunity to use this with the pre-apprenticeship, because the Amatrol content is really, really great.
Yes.
It can be great,
Right.
really leveraged in kind of a blended learning setting where you're doing some online, but also kind of doing that hands-on in the lab and so forth. So that's
Wonderful.
definitely where,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that may be the silver bullet, honestly, in this Missouri conversation because, well, really for two reasons. I mean, I think if this is part of something larger, I think we could get that accountable activity we're talking about. But there is so much political favor, political capital right now with apprenticeships and pre-apprenticeships that that may be a way to promote this as part of something larger that I think would find favor with the regulators,
Yeah, I think that's a good avenue. I mean, basically what we're thinking, a lot of locations, it's healthcare and manufacturing. Of course, you throw the IT in there because there's tons of IT stuff and they can kind of go in online and do that on their own. But using those two avenues, I think, is the sweet spot that we're finding as well. So.
Very good. Yeah, that actually gives me a lot of hope to think that might be the approach we could use, and I know we're kind of trying to figure that out as well about how to get more pre-apprenticeship options here in the region. Man, the pre-apprenticeship model is so wonderful because it has that favor that they're kind of automatically placed on eligible training provider lists. Without typically all the overhead and nonsense and extra time required at traditional training programs.
No, that's absolutely it. And a lot of the
Yes.
focus, too, that we're trying to push with this portal is the employer side of things, because that's where we're finding really needs some TLC in terms of the workforce development area,
You bet. You bet.
So using this and really leveraging this with the business services. So we have kind of a screening manufacturing practice in place that we're practicing. We have opportunities to offer incumbent workers training, which is also a huge part of WIOA. So we're trying to find those areas that we can really excel in and kind of leverage this. But it is kind of understanding the political scheme of things and understanding who can really get this, up and running.
No doubt. We're kind of taming the Wild West with this whole, all the pieces of WIOA, I suppose. But yeah, that's very helpful. So just kind of thinking out loud on where we go next, I mean, like we said, I think that there's a whole lot here that's, very, very good to work with and feasible and would benefit us. We've got to figure out how to get the pieces of the puzzle together. But if you have, I hate to use the term references, but even just, some other workforce folks that are kind of doing what we're wanting to be doing with this, particularly, you mentioned Albany as one of those. I'd love to see more material or the chance to visit with someone a little bit about, how their structures are for pre-apprenticeship and linking this up. If there are other, folks you might recommend us visiting with, I think that could, help us figure these pieces out, per se.
Yeah, I'll share our conversation with Brian today and see if he can connect you with someone to talk about this a little bit further. And like you said, I mean, this really is kind of the Wild West. So as we're going along, we're learning new things, and we really are trying to kind of promote this best practices initiative with these kind of 10 pilot locations. So we'll see what we can share with you, and hopefully, kind of move things along a little bit and maybe connect you with Ken at some point as well.
Sounds great. That would be wonderful.
All right, Jason. Well, are there any further questions that you have from me?
No, I can't think of any for now. I think this is at least one more step up the ladder in this process.
Exactly.
Of many, right?
Of course, it's a long process, that's for sure. But a lot of potential.
I'm one that wants to tear barriers down and make things simpler. But unfortunately, it's the deck we're dealt. So we'll get there.
Absolutely, it's challenging, but very rewarding at the same time.
For sure.
All right. Well, I hope you enjoy the rest of your week and have a good weekend.
You too. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for your time. Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.